Every time you rush to respond, every time you feel that pull in your chest to explain yourself to someone who has already made up their mind, you give away something that can never come back. Not your dignity. Not your image. Something quieter than that. Your time. Your mental space. The hours that could have been spent on something that actually belongs to you. Most people spend entire days, sometimes entire weeks, living inside a single conversation that is already over. And the conversation is not even happening in the real world anymore. It is happening inside their own head, on a loop, at 2 in the morning, while the other person is fast asleep. That is where the quiet theft begins. Not with someone taking something from you, but with you, unknowingly, handing it over. You have probably been there. Someone sends you a message, maybe a jab, maybe a dismissive comment, maybe a representation of who you are that feels nothing like the person you know yourself to be, and something tightens instantly. The words sit there on the screen and your mind begins writing the reply. Not a simple reply. The perfect reply. The one that will finally make them understand. The one that will set the record straight, restore the truth, and show them, once and for all, what kind of person you actually are. And so you think. You draft. You delete. You rethink. You imagine their response. You prepare your counter. And then you rethink again. And hours pass. Real hours. Hours that belong to your actual life. And at the end of all that mental labor, if you do send the message, what happens? Sometimes nothing. Sometimes they reply with something that ignites the whole cycle again. And sometimes you do not even send it. You just sit with the weight of everything unsaid, feeling simultaneously drained and unresolved, carrying a conversation that the other person may have already completely forgotten. This is not a small thing. This is where a significant portion of human suffering quietly lives, not in great tragedies, but in this constant, invisible drain. In the mental replaying of conversations. In the emotional bracing for someone's next opinion. In the long, exhausting work of trying to make people understand you who, on some level, have chosen not to. And the reason it matters so much, the reason it deserves more than a passing thought, is this: attention is not just focus. It is a portion of your life. A real, finite, irreplaceable portion. Every minute your mind gives to a conflict, a criticism, or a careless comment is a minute it is not giving to your health, your creativity, your work, the people who genuinely love you, or the version of yourself you are still becoming. The math here is not complicated. It is just uncomfortable. Because it means that in many cases, the real damage is not done by the difficult person. It is done by the space we allow them to occupy inside us, long after the moment itself has passed. Long after they have moved on. Long after the conversation has ended for everyone except the one person who kept it alive. So the question worth sitting with is this: why do we do it? Why does one dismissive comment from someone who barely knows us have the power to rearrange the entire interior of our day? Why do we fight so hard to be understood by the very people who seem most committed to misunderstanding us? And why does walking away, simply choosing not to respond, feel so much harder than it should? The easy answer is pride. Not wanting to be seen a certain way. And there is truth in that. But if you stay with the question a little longer, a deeper answer emerges, one that most people do not reach right away, because it requires looking at something uncomfortable inside themselves rather than outside. The deeper answer is fear. A very specific kind of fear. The fear that says, if they misunderstand me and I do not correct it, then the misunderstanding becomes real. If I do not defend myself, the false version of me will stand. And somehow, in some part of the mind, allowing someone to hold an inaccurate opinion of you feels genuinely dangerous, like a threat to your identity itself. Like something that needs to be resolved before you are allowed to feel okay again. This is where the problem is not only the difficult people in your life. It is something that lives inside you, a deeply human need to manage how you are perceived. And it is so familiar, so woven into the way most people move through the world, that it rarely gets questioned. It just operates. Quietly, automatically, expensively. Think about the last time someone criticized you unfairly. Or misread your intentions. Or described you in a way that felt like a distortion of who you actually are. What was the immediate impulse? For most people, it is to correct. To clarify. To explain. To provide context. To walk them through exactly what they missed and why they are wrong. And on the surface, this seems reasonable. Healthy, even. Is it not good to communicate? Is it not mature to address misunderstandings? Sometimes, yes, of course it is. There are relationships worth the effort of honest, thoughtful conversation. There are misunderstandings that need to be addressed because the relationship matters, because the other person is genuinely willing to hear you, because the clarity will serve something real and lasting. Not every disagreement is a threat to your peace. Not every difficult conversation should be avoided. There are moments, in families, in close friendships, in meaningful professional relationships, where saying the difficult thing clearly and respectfully is exactly what the situation needs. Silence is not always wisdom. Sometimes it is simply avoidance wearing a calmer mask. But there is a crucial difference between a conversation that moves toward genuine understanding and a confrontation that exists only to consume your energy. And most people, if they are genuinely honest with themselves, already know the difference. They know which conversations are actually about connection and which ones are about being proven right. They know which people are sincerely trying to understand them and which people are not seeking understanding at all, but something else entirely. Because some people do not come to you with questions because they want your answers. They come with statements dressed as questions. With provocations dressed as concerns. With criticism dressed in the language of care. And when you respond, when you explain, justify, defend, or patiently clarify, you have given them exactly what they came for. Not understanding. Access. Access to your emotional state. A window into the interior of your world. And every time you give it freely, every time you take the bait, you are not protecting your reputation. You are teaching people how little energy it takes to pull you off your center. This is not a cynical reading of human nature. Most people in difficult interactions are not running calculated strategies. Most of this is unconscious, patterns that developed long before either of you had the language to describe them. But patterns exist even when intentions are innocent. And the pattern worth recognizing is this: when you consistently react, consistently explain, consistently make yourself available for every emotional disruption, you are not demonstrating strength. You are demonstrating that your inner state can be reached from the outside, by almost anyone, at almost any time. And a conflict does not grow because one person keeps pushing. A conflict grows because two people keep feeding it. The moment you stop feeding it, not with contempt, not with silence used as a weapon, but simply by choosing to redirect your attention, it begins to shrink. Not dramatically. Not overnight. But quietly, steadily, the way a fire loses its strength when the oxygen is no longer offered. You do not have to win. You do not have to make them see. You do not have to have the last word, or the most devastating final sentence, or the reply that leaves them with no possible response. You just have to stop choosing the conflict over yourself. Again and again and again, in the small moments, until it becomes less a choice and more a way of being. But here is where something deeper needs to be named, something most conversations about, not reacting, gloss over, because it is more uncomfortable than the surface advice. The need to explain yourself is not irrational. It is not shallow. The need to be seen accurately, to be understood as you actually are, is a legitimate and deeply human longing. It is not weakness. It is not insecurity in the way people usually dismiss that word. It is something much older and much more woven into human experience than any self-help framework acknowledges. We are social creatures. For most of human history, how others perceived us determined our belonging, our safety, sometimes our survival. The part of you that wants to correct the record is not broken. It is just, in many situations, responding to a context where the correction will never actually land. Because here is the deeper truth, the one that genuinely changes things when you let it in fully: some people cannot understand you. Not because you are too complex. Not because you fail to explain clearly enough. Not because if you found the right words, the right tone, the right moment, something would finally shift. But because they are committed to a version of you that serves their own narrative. And when someone has already decided who you are, no amount of explanation, however calm, however precise, however perfectly worded, will rewrite that decision. You can craft the most articulate, thoughtful, generous response of your life and hand it to someone who will read it through the filter of what they already believe about you. And they will find within it exactly what they expected to find. Because the conversation was never really about understanding. It was about confirming what already existed. This is one of the most quietly liberating realizations a person can arrive at, and one of the most quietly painful ones too. Liberating because it removes an enormous weight, the belief that you are responsible for making everyone understand you. Painful because it requires accepting that there will be people in your life who carry a version of you that is not true, and there is genuinely nothing you can do about it. You can live beautifully, behave generously, and speak with integrity, and some people will still hold what they have decided to hold. The question is, can you let that be? Can you allow someone to carry a distorted image of you without it unraveling your own sense of who you are? Can you trust your knowledge of yourself, even when someone else is absolutely certain of a different version? This is not a rhetorical question. It is the actual practice. And it is harder than it sounds, because so much of how people have learned to understand themselves is tied to how others reflect them back. We have been taught, sometimes gently, sometimes harshly, to look outward for confirmation of what is inward. So when the reflection someone holds up looks wrong, something inside us desperately wants to correct it. Not only for their sake. For ours. Because being seen inaccurately can feel, in the body, like rejection. Not intellectually, perhaps. But emotionally, in the tightness in the chest, in the restlessness, in the inability to simply let it go, being misunderstood can feel like a verdict on your worth. And this is the hidden psychological truth underneath all the over-explaining, all the defensive replies, all the hours spent composing the perfect response. Over-explaining is not simply a communication habit. It is an attempt to control something that is fundamentally not in your control, another person's inner world. When you explain yourself repeatedly, with increasing urgency, with more context, more detail, more justification, you are not sharing information. You are trying to engineer a particular outcome inside another person's mind. You are trying to make them see you the way you see yourself. And every time it does not work, the frustration is not just about being misunderstood. It is the frustration of a control that was never actually available to you. The over-explaining is self-protection. It is an attempt to argue your way out of a rejection that has not yet been consciously named as one. And this is precisely why telling someone to just stop caring what people think almost never produces any lasting change. Because the problem is not an intellectual one. It does not yield to a decision. The feeling does not simply obey the thought. What changes things is understanding what the approval was really for, and slowly, carefully, returning that authority to where it actually belongs, to yourself. Think about what it would mean to genuinely know your own worth. Not in the abstract. Not as something you say to yourself as a reminder. But as a lived, quiet, unshakable reality. It would mean that when someone offers a distorted version of who you are, there is no internal earthquake. Not because you are numb. Not because you have become cold or indifferent to what others experience. But because you have a stable enough foundation inside yourself that the wind does not bring the structure down. You can hear the opinion. You can genuinely consider whether there is something useful in it. And then, if there is not, you can set it down. Not with effort and gritted teeth. But with ease. The ease of someone who already knows the answer to the question they are being asked. This is not arrogance. Arrogance is fragile. Arrogance needs to loudly correct, to retaliate, to constantly reassert. What we are describing is something much quieter, self-knowledge as a form of groundedness. A calm, unannounced confidence in the fact that you are more than any single person's interpretation of you. That your identity does not hinge on their recognition of it. And building this kind of inner stability is not about building walls. It is not about becoming cold, or unfeeling, or difficult to reach. It is not about deciding that everyone is a threat, that vulnerability is weakness, or that the only safe position is total emotional withdrawal. The goal is not to become someone who cannot be hurt. That person does not exist, and if they seem to, it is usually because something real was sacrificed to get there. We are all reachable by pain, by love, by genuine loss, by the unexpected kindness of another human being. The goal is not imperviousness. The goal is stability. The ability to be reached by real life, by real emotions, real relationships, real experiences, without being destabilized by every passing comment or casual dismissal from someone who does not know you well enough to matter in the first place. There is a difference between depth and total exposure. You can be a deeply feeling person without making every corner of your inner world available to everyone. You can care about people without surrendering your peace to their moods. You can love someone genuinely without making their every opinion a referendum on your value. These are not contradictions. They are distinctions that most people were simply never taught to make clearly. And learning them, slowly, through experience, changes the quality of every relationship you have, including the one you have with yourself. Healthy detachment does not mean you stop caring. It means you care without losing yourself in the caring. You stay engaged with life, emotionally, fully, honestly, but you maintain a thread back to your own center. So that when someone tries to pull you off that center, with a sharp criticism, a deliberate provocation, or the particular cruelty of a silence designed to make you anxious, there is enough root to hold you steady. You bend. You feel it. But you do not break off. And silence, real silence, the kind that comes from a grounded place rather than a reactive one, is not a punishment. It is not a tactic. It is not something you deploy to make someone anxious or to signal your superiority or to win a psychological game. The moment silence is used as a tool for control, it has already become something else, another form of reaction, just dressed in different clothing, quieter but equally entangled. Real silence is simply the decision to stop pouring yourself into a place that cannot hold what you are offering. It is not a statement directed at the other person. It is a return, to yourself, to your own clarity, to the version of your life that exists outside of this particular conflict. When you stop responding to someone who is not engaging in good faith, you are not abandoning the relationship. You are refusing to continue feeding a dynamic that was slowly, steadily hollowing you out. And that is not coldness. That is honesty. That is the recognition that some things deserve your full presence, and this is not one of them. A boundary, when it comes from this place, does not need to be announced loudly. It does not require an explanation or a warning or a dramatic confrontation. It is simply held, quietly, consistently, without hostility and without apology. The person who holds a real boundary, built in self-respect rather than panic, does not need the other person to understand it, agree with it, or approve of it. They just hold it. And they find, over time, that they do not miss the chaos they chose to stop participating in. This is where many people get stuck, because setting a limit with someone who is used to having unlimited access does not feel clean. It feels like rejection. It feels, in the moment, like a form of cruelty. Like you are choosing yourself over them. And in a world that has often equated self-sacrifice with love, that has treated the giving away of your own peace as proof of how much you care, choosing yourself can feel deeply, uncomfortably wrong. You may feel guilty. You may replay the moment of choosing your own well-being and wonder whether it makes you selfish. You may rehearse explanations that you owe to no one. Let that guilt be examined rather than simply obeyed. Because very often, guilt of this particular kind is not a moral signal. It is a conditioned one. It is the residue of having been taught, somewhere, in some relationship or environment, that your comfort matters less than the comfort of the people around you. And unlearning that quietly, not with anger, not with resentment, but with patience and clarity, is not selfishness. It is the most honest kind of care, because you cannot give sustainably from a place that is constantly being emptied. None of this is a license to avoid every difficult conversation, or to treat every challenging person as someone to be managed rather than engaged. There are real relationships in your life, people who genuinely know you, who speak to you with honesty and care, who hold your growth as something they actually want, and those relationships sometimes require you to hear things that are uncomfortable. The discomfort of receiving honest feedback from someone you trust is not the same thing as the exhaustion of being repeatedly baited by someone who has no interest in your well-being. Both feel uncomfortable. Only one is useful. The ability to distinguish between the two is one of the most important things a person can develop. Not every critic is a threat. Not every difficult moment is manipulation. Not every person who challenges you is trying to harm you. Constructive challenge, even when it stings, even when it arrives at an inconvenient moment, can carry something genuinely valuable. A person who has become so armored that they cannot receive honest feedback from anyone has not found peace. They have found a different kind of isolation, quieter but equally costly. The question is always, is this person engaging honestly, with some form of care, with a genuine investment in something real between us? If yes, then the discomfort of hearing something true is worth sitting with. It may be precisely the thing that helps you grow. But cruelty dressed as honesty is still cruelty. Repeated emotional baiting dressed as concern is still manipulation. And these things, unlike genuine challenge, do not deserve unlimited access to you, regardless of how they are packaged, and regardless of how guilty you feel for recognizing what they are. Because once you stop treating every provocation as something that demands your immediate response, something begins to change inside you. You start to notice how much energy was going to things that were never yours to carry. You start to reclaim hours that were previously swallowed by mental replaying, by rehearsed arguments, by the exhausting work of managing other people's impressions of you. And slowly, not all at once, but steadily and unmistakably, you begin to feel something unfamiliar. Something quieter than anything you have felt in a long time. Something that, for lack of a better word, resembles peace. Not the peace of a life without difficulty. Not the peace of someone who has no relationships that test them, no moments of genuine hurt, no real stakes. But the peace of someone who has stopped abandoning themselves every time the world offers an invitation to do so. The peace of someone who can sit with being misunderstood and not fall apart. Who can hear a criticism and decide, without panic, without the need for an immediate response, whether it contains something worth examining. And if it does not, who can simply set it down without the residue following them for days. There is a particular kind of tiredness that comes from living on the defensive. From moving through the world in a constant state of emotional readiness, always slightly braced, always scanning for the next judgment, always slightly prepared for the next thing that will require clarification or defense. It is an exhaustion that most people carry so long they forget it is not how life is supposed to feel. They forget that not everyone moves through the world this way. They forget that the vigilance itself was learned, in a family, in a relationship, in a series of experiences that taught them that being misunderstood had consequences, that not correcting someone's perception of you could cost you something important. The body holds that learning long after the original situations have passed. So even when the current person in front of you is not actually dangerous, even when the current comment is not actually a threat, the nervous system responds as if it has seen this before. The chest tightens. The mind accelerates. The hands move to type a reply before the thought is even fully formed. Because somewhere deep down, a part of you still believes that if you do not respond right now, something will be permanently lost. What would it mean to teach that part of you something new? Not to dismiss it. Not to tell it that it was wrong to want protection. But to show it, slowly and through experience, that you can survive being misunderstood. That you can sit with someone holding a version of you that is not true, and the ground beneath you stays solid. That the thing you were afraid to lose, your sense of yourself, was never actually in their hands to take. It was yours all along. You just forgot that for a while. This is the real work. Not the work of declarations, or of deciding once that you are going to be a different kind of person starting today. It is the work of small moments. The pause before the defensive reply. The breath taken instead of the immediate reaction. The choice, made imperfectly and often, to return your attention to your own life, your own work, your own health, your own relationships, the people who see you clearly and choose to stay. Every time you make that choice, something shifts. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But the reflex weakens slightly. The space between the trigger and the response grows a little wider. And in that space, that small but expanding space between what happens and how you choose to respond, is where your actual freedom lives. That space is not emptiness. It is the place where you get to decide who you are, rather than having it decided for you by the most recent person who expressed an opinion about it. The person who genuinely knows their own worth does not need every mind to understand them. This is not a performance of strength. It is not a posture you adopt while privately hoping they will come around. It is a quietly held knowledge, lived, not announced, that your value is not determined by who recognizes it at any given moment. And this knowledge, once it settles into the body rather than remaining a thought in the mind, changes everything. Not in the dramatic way. Not with a sudden revelation or a single transformative conversation. But in the small, daily, accumulating way that actually matters. In the messages you no longer feel compelled to send. In the conversations you allow to end without chasing the resolution you were never going to find there anyway. In the mornings that feel a little lighter because you stopped dragging yesterday's unresolved conflict into today. In the growing sense, quiet, steady, real, that your inner life belongs to you, and that not everyone deserves a door into it. That some people will never have access to your peace because you have finally, with patience and without bitterness, stopped handing it over. Think about what you actually lose when someone you barely know forms an unflattering opinion of you. You lose, what, exactly? Their validation. And if their validation was built on a misunderstanding, on a version of you that was never real, then what was it worth to begin with? You were building something on a foundation that was never solid. So when it falls, the falling is not truly a loss. It is a return to something more honest. And even with people who do know you, people you care about, people whose opinion you have genuinely valued, there will be moments when they see you through a lens distorted by their own pain, their own history, their own unresolved things. When that happens, the most loving thing available to you, for them and for yourself, is to refuse to become the person they are accusing you of being. To hold your own truth quietly, without retaliation, without cruelty, without needing them to change their mind before you can feel okay again. This is perhaps the most demanding form of self-respect. Because it requires trusting yourself in the very moment when someone you care about is suggesting you should not be trusted. It requires maintaining your own sense of reality when someone else is offering a different, more unflattering one, and the offering comes with emotional weight behind it. And it requires doing all of this without shutting down, without becoming the cold and unreachable version of yourself that you never actually wanted to be. You can be warm and still have limits. You can be open and still be selective. You can love people deeply and still protect the part of you that belongs only to you. You can stay soft without being endlessly available for things that cost you too much. These are not contradictions. They are the marks of someone who has done enough of this work to hold complexity without collapsing it into simple rules, never feel anything, or let everyone in, or cut everyone off. Life is more nuanced than any of those positions. And so, eventually, are the people who have genuinely grown inside it. The goal was never to become unreachable. The goal was always to become the kind of person who can be reached, by love, by genuine connection, by honest conversation, by the real and ordinary beauty of a life actually lived, without being destabilized by every opinion, every misunderstanding, every person who decided they already knew who you were before you had a chance to show them. You already know, if you are honest with yourself, the difference between the conflicts in your life that are worth your energy and the ones that are quietly eating it. You already know the relationships that genuinely nourish you versus the ones that leave you consistently more depleted than when you arrived. You already know which replayed conversations are pointing to something real and which ones are simply a loop your mind cannot seem to exit, not because the situation requires more thought, but because you have not yet given yourself permission to let it go. The knowledge is there. What takes time is trusting it enough to act on it. Trusting it enough to let some conversations end without your final word. Trusting it enough to not respond to every message that was designed specifically to pull a response from you. Trusting it enough to sit, even briefly, even uncomfortably, with being misunderstood, without immediately reaching for the explanation that will fix it. That trust, in your own clarity, in your own judgment, in your own fundamental right to peace, cannot be given to you from outside. Not by a video, not by a validation, not by someone finally admitting they were wrong about you. It can only be built from within, through the quiet and consistent practice of choosing yourself, not loudly, not at anyone's expense, but gently and repeatedly, in the thousand small moments that together make up a life. Every time you choose your own clarity over someone else's chaos, you are building something. Every time you pause instead of react, you are building something. Every time you decide that your mental space is worth protecting, not because you are better than anyone, not because you are above conflict, but because your life is genuinely too valuable to spend indefinitely on things that do not serve it, you are building something real. Something that belongs to you. And what you are building, slowly and without any fanfare, is a life that feels like your own again. There will still be difficult people. There will still be misunderstandings, unfair criticisms, moments of genuine hurt, and relationships that test everything you think you have learned. Peace is not the absence of these things. Peace is the capacity to meet them without losing yourself in the meeting. To respond when it genuinely matters. To stay quiet when quiet is what is true. To love without surrendering your center. And to know, in a way that lives below thought, in the steady and unhurried quiet of your actual being, that you are enough, exactly as you are, whether or not every person in your life can see it clearly. That knowledge, once it begins to take root, changes the texture of everything. Not the circumstances, necessarily. But the experience of moving through them. The weight you carry feels different when you have stopped picking up things that were never yours. The silence between conversations feels different when it belongs to you. And the sense of yourself, who you are, what you value, what you are actually doing with the time you have, feels different when it no longer has to be approved by every voice that happens to speak in your direction. A peaceful person is not someone no one can hurt. It is someone who no longer lets every outside voice decide who they are. It is someone who has learned, slowly and with great patience, to come home to themselves, again and again, even on the days when the outside world is doing everything it can to pull them away. If something in these words landed somewhere real for you, if you recognized yourself in any of it, in the loop of overthinking, or the exhaustion of over-explaining, or the quiet longing to simply stop reacting and start living, I would genuinely love to know what it was. Not because the comment will change anything that is true for you. But because saying it out loud is sometimes the beginning of actually believing it. So share whatever feels honest below. And if this kind of reflection is something you want to keep returning to, then quietly, without any pressure at all, I would be glad to have you here.